What happens when cartoon worlds collide, and absolutely none of it makes sense? The 1990s gave us the strangest crossover era in animation history, where mascots, mutants, and mystery solvers all showed up in the same universe just because they could. Some were brilliant accidents, others total head-scratchers, but every one of them was unforgettable. From time-traveling families to crime-fighting ducks, brace yourself because the weirdest cartoon crossovers are about to crash your memory. Number 17. The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, 1990. Imagine two of Hanna-Barbera's biggest families, one living in the Stone Age, the other in a futuristic sky city suddenly swapping eras. That's exactly what happened when The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones hit TV screens in 1990. Using a convenient time machine gone wrong, George Jetson and his family are catapulted back to bedrock, where Fred Flintstone mistakes them for visiting aliens. The concept was part nostalgia, part marketing stunt. Hanna-Barbera was desperate to revive its classic lineup, hoping that pairing its two juggernauts would reignite interest. The animation was decent for its time, but the logic? Questionable at best. Watching flying cars land next to dinosaurs made even loyal fans scratch their heads. Still, the movie delivered charming absurdity, Fred trying to invent modern gadgets, Judy Jetson flirting with prehistoric locals, and Elroy befriending Pebbles. It was a collision of timelines that nobody asked for, but everyone watched anyway. The movie remains a fascinating time capsule of how studios viewed shared universes before the Marvel era, messy, chaotic, and kind of lovable in its nonsense. In the end, The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones proved one thing: logic takes a back seat when nostalgia hits full speed, and somehow we're still talking about it 3 decades later. Number 16, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles x Power Rangers, The Next Mutation, 1998. Yes, this actually happened. The heroes in a half-shell teamed up with the spandex-clad Space Rangers in a live-action crossover called Shell-Shocked. Airing in 1998 during Power Rangers in Space, it was a wild fever dream that merged 2 mega franchises under the same corporate roof. On paper, it sounds cool the Turtles join forces with the Power Rangers to fight evil. But the execution? Pure chaos. The turtle suits from The Next Mutation were clunky, the dialogue painfully awkward, and the tone whiplashed between goofy and deadly serious. Even die-hard fans couldn't tell if it was meant to be parody or promotion. The crossover was mostly designed to push toys and raise ratings for The Next Mutation, which was already struggling. But what audiences got instead was a pop culture car crash, Leonardo debating with the Red Ranger like a motivational coach, and Michelangelo flirting with alien sidekicks. Critics called it one of the strangest franchise fusions ever made. But it's also kind of brilliant in hindsight proof that the 90s had no creative boundaries. If 2 completely different worlds could coexist for 22 surreal minutes, then truly anything was possible. It's weird, it's awkward, and it's unforgettable, the kind of TV chaos that defined a generation. Number 15, Scooby-Doo meets Johnny Bravo, 1997. When Cartoon Network's edgy blonde bachelor met the gang from Mystery Inc., the result was pure 90s weirdness. In a special bumper short titled Bravo Dooby-Doo, the sunglasses-wearing muscle man got trapped in a haunted mansion with Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, Velma, and Fred. The crossover aired in 1997 and became an instant cult favorite for how bizarrely perfect it was. Johnny Bravo's self-absorbed bravado collided with the wholesome, clue-hunting energy of the Scooby gang. He flirted with Daphne, annoyed Velma, and screamed louder than Shaggy during ghost chases. The writing leaned into the contrast, mocking both characters' worlds while celebrating them. What made this crossover shine wasn't logic, but personality. The animation blended styles seamlessly, and the humor hit that sweet spot between satire and nostalgia. It felt like a love letter to both classic mystery cartoons and Cartoon Network's new wave of ironic humor. Decades later, Bravo Doobie-Doo still gets replayed online because it captures what made the 90s golden for animation: chaos with charm. No forced moral, no studio politics, just pure crossover fun. It didn't make sense, but that was the point. Sometimes the weirdest team-ups are the ones that actually work. Number 14, Animaniacs x Freakazoid, 1997. You might remember Animaniacs for its zany humor and fourth-wall-breaking chaos, and Freakazoid for its offbeat superhero nonsense. But when these two collided in 1997, it felt like someone opened a cartoon wormhole. The episode The Lobe brought Yakko, Wakko, and Dot into Freakazoid's world, and it was as bizarre as it sounds. The crossover wasn't just random, it was a tongue-in-cheek jab at the network itself. Both shows were produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation, yet executives constantly shuffled them around for ratings. The result? A chaotic episode that mocked corporate meddling while letting every character go delightfully overboard. Freakazoid traded quips with Yakko, the Warners performed impromptu songs, and even the villains got confused about which universe they were in. The energy was manic, the pacing frantic, and the humor self-aware. It didn't expand lore or connect worlds, it just poked fun at the idea of crossovers altogether. Fans loved it for that reason. It wasn't about story, it was about celebrating absurdity. Animaniacs x Freakazoid stands as a time capsule of 90s animation, when satire ruled and logic was optional. The result? A crossover that made no sense, and that's exactly why it was perfect. Number 13, Pinky and the Brain x Tiny Toon Adventures, 1998. Few crossovers made fans angrier or more confused than Pinky, Elmyra, and the Brain. Released in 1998, this bizarre experiment tried to merge Pinky and the Brain with Tiny Toon Adventures. The idea came straight from network executives who wanted to make the show cuter and more family-friendly. Instead, they created one of the strangest hybrid series in animation history. The genius lab mice were forced to live with Elmyra Duff, the overly affectionate girl from Tiny Toons, after escaping their lab. Every episode followed the mice trying to continue their world domination plans while surviving Elmyra's chaotic love. The writers were not thrilled. They even included a line in the theme song mocking the network. "It's what the network wants. Why bother to complain?" Fans didn't know whether to laugh or cringe. The sharp, satirical tone of Pinky and the Brain clashed horribly with Elmyra's slapstick energy. What was once clever and biting suddenly felt sugar-coated and awkward. Despite the talent involved, the series didn't last. Still, it remains a fascinating snapshot of how studios tried to merge successful shows for quick ratings. It's the crossover that proved sometimes. Mixing two great things doesn't double the fun, it just multiplies the confusion. Number 12. The Mask x Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, 1997. If you ever wanted proof that the 90s had zero creative boundaries, this is it. In 1997, two of Jim Carrey's most over-the-top characters, the Mask and Ace Ventura, somehow met in animated form. Both had their own TV spin-offs, and one day, network executives decided to smash them together for an event episode that felt like caffeine and chaos mixed in a blender. The crossover titled Have Mask, Will Travel featured Ace Ventura accidentally getting hold of Loki's magical mask. What followed was an explosion of puns, slapstick, and green-faced madness. The humor was loud, the animation manic, and the storyline barely held together, but it was glorious nonsense. Seeing Ace transformed into a mask-powered version of himself was like watching cartoon physics implode in real time. Fans were divided. Some thought it was a dream come true. Others called it proof that too much of a good thing can be dangerous for your sanity. Still, the episode gained cult status online, mainly because it captured the pure, reckless energy of mid-90s animation. It didn't make sense, but it didn't need to. The Mask and Ace Ventura is remembered as a cartoon crossover that asked one question, and one question only. What happens when two whirlwinds collide? Answer: you get pure, unfiltered weirdness. Number 11. Garfield and Friends, US Acres, 1990 to 1994. Technically, Garfield and Friends was already a double-feature half-cat, half-barnyard. But what made this crossover so odd was how casually it blended two completely different comic worlds into one Saturday morning sandwich. Jim Davis, creator of both Garfield and US Acres, convinced CBS to merge them in one program. So, between Garfield's lazy sarcasm and Orson Pig's farmyard pep talks, viewers were flipping between cynicism and sincerity every few minutes. One segment featured Garfield scheming to avoid work. The next had Wade Duck confronting life lessons about courage. It was emotional whiplash with lasagna on top. The animation stayed consistent, but the tones were galaxies apart. Garfield was dry, ironic humor aimed at older kids and adults, while US Acres leaned into kid-friendly morals and song numbers. Yet somehow, the strange pairing worked, or at least endured. The format became iconic enough that many fans didn't even realize US Acres was a separate franchise. In hindsight, it's the gentlest, what were they thinking crossover on this list, weird by design, yet oddly comforting. Watching it today feels like channel surfing inside a single cartoon. 1 second sarcasm, the next, a pep talk from a pig. Only in the 90s. Number 10. The Simpsons, The Critic, 1995. Ah, the crossover that almost tore Springfield apart. In 1995. The Simpsons invited Jay Sherman, the snarky film critic from Fox's other animated show, The Critic, to guest star in the episode A Star Is Burns. It sounded like harmless synergy until both fan bases revolted. The Simpsons was known for sharp, self-contained satire, while The Critic focused on movie parodies and media jokes. When Jay Sherman suddenly appeared to judge Springfield's new film festival, many saw it as a forced advertisement for another show. Even Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, hated the idea so much he had his name removed from the credits. Still, the episode itself is a riot. Homer's disastrous home movie, Barney's surprisingly touching short, and Jay's dry one-liners created a meta-masterpiece of awkward comedy. "It stinks" became both a catchphrase and a review of the crossover itself. Looking back, it's the perfect snapshot of 90s TV ego clever writers, clashing brands, and one very confused audience. It might not have made sense, but it gave us something unforgettable. The first time Springfield realized that even in cartoons, cross-promotion could get messy. Number 9. DuckTales x Darkwing Duck, 1991 to 1992. Before cinematic universes were trendy, Disney tried to connect two of its biggest hits, DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. On paper, both shows existed in the same Duckverse, but when characters began crossing over, continuity took a dive straight into confusion. Launchpad McQuack, Scrooge's accident-prone pilot, suddenly became Darkwing's sidekick with zero explanation. Gizmo Duck, the robotic hero from DuckTales, showed up in Darkwing Duck episodes as if interdimensional travel was an everyday commute. Fans spent years debating if St. Canard and Duckburg were neighboring cities or parallel worlds. The tone shift didn't help. DuckTales was an adventurous treasure hunt series, while Darkwing Duck leaned into superhero parody and slapstick. Yet their paths kept colliding, creating lore chaos that Disney never fully clarified. Still, the crossover moments were packed with charm. Scrooge's fortune meets Darkwing's ego, and suddenly cartoon capitalism meets crime-fighting comedy. It made no sense, but that unpredictability gave both shows a sense of shared magic. Even today, Disney's modern reboots nod back to that confusing connection, proving that sometimes the weirdest crossovers end up defining an entire fan universe. After all, who needs logic when you've got ducks with gadgets? Number 8. Sonic the Hedgehog, X-Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, 1994. In the early 90s, Sega's blue mascot was everywhere, but few remember he had two cartoons airing at almost the same time. One was the darker, dramatic Sonic the Hedgehog nicknamed Saturn. The other was the goofy, slapstick adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Then came Sonic Christmas Blast, the bizarre special that mashed both universes together like mismatched puzzle pieces. In this strange holiday crossover, Sonic looked like his goofy adventures self, but behaved like his serious Saturn counterpart. Supporting characters swapped personalities, timelines blurred, and the tone ricocheted from heartwarming to absurd in seconds. Was it canon? Nobody knew. Sega just wanted to keep Sonic on TV during holiday toy season. What made it truly weird was how obvious the shift felt. Villains from one series appeared next to allies from another, as if they'd always known each other. The result was a confused but oddly entertaining mix of moral lessons, chase scenes, and Christmas chaos. Fans today view Sonic Christmas Blast as the ultimate 90s marketing crossover, sentimental, fast, and totally baffling. It might not have made sense, but it perfectly captured the decade's spirit. Anything for ratings, as long as Sonic kept running. Number 7. Captain N, The Game Master X, The Legend of Zelda, 1990. Before Smash Bros. Made Nintendo crossovers cool, there was Captain N, The Game Master, the show that threw every Nintendo character into one big digital blender. Airing in 1990, it followed a kid named Kevin who got sucked into his NS and teamed up with video game icons to save Videoland. Among his allies, Link and Princess Zelda. But don't expect the epic hero you remember. This version of Link was sarcastic, overconfident, and borderline unrecognizable. The crossover episodes tried to merge The Legend of Zelda's fantasy tone with Captain N's video game chaos, and the result was like watching two worlds speak different languages. One minute they're storming castles, the next they're cracking sitcom jokes about joystick power-ups. Fans were baffled, yet fascinated. Seeing beloved game heroes reduced to wisecracking cartoon sidekicks was equal parts hilarious and horrifying. The animation was rushed, the voice acting over the top, and continuity practically non-existent. Still, it's legendary in its weirdness. Before Nintendo got careful about its brand image, this show went all in on crossover mayhem. It made no sense, but it made history, proving that even the most unlikely worlds could collide on a Saturday morning. Number 6. The Real Ghostbusters, Slimer, and The Real Ghostbusters, 1990. When The Real Ghostbusters spun off into Slimer and The Real Ghostbusters in 1990, fans got a double dose of paranormal madness and confusion. The crossover turned a supernatural comedy into half ghost-busting adventure, half slapstick slime cartoon. Each episode awkwardly split in two. One segment followed the professional team catching ghosts, while the next featured Slimer's solo misadventures with random human friends. It was like watching two different shows stitched together with ectoplasm. Producers were trying to appeal to younger viewers by softening the tone, but in doing so, they diluted what made The Real Ghostbusters great: the humor, the scares, and the chemistry. Suddenly, the ghost-fighting heroes became background characters to their own mascot. Fans didn't know how to react. Was it a sequel? A spin-off? A reboot? Nobody could tell. Yet, despite its identity crisis, it gave us some unforgettable moments, including crossover episodes where Slimer's slapstick collided with the team's serious investigations. It didn't make much sense, but it captured the wild experimentation of 90s animation. 1 foot in the supernatural, 1 foot in Saturday morning silliness, and both feet covered in green goo. Number 5. Beetlejuice X Tiny Toon Adventures, 1991. If you blinked, you might have missed one of Warner Brothers' strangest crossover moments, Beetlejuice meeting the Tiny Toon Adventures crew. It wasn't a full episode, but a series of promotional bumpers and cameo bits that aired in 1991 to hype both shows. Still, it was just enough to make everyone ask, who approved this? Imagine the fast-talking trickster ghost cracking jokes with Buster Bunny and Plucky Duck. The humor clashed beautifully, Beetlejuice's creepy chaos colliding with the innocent slapstick of the Tiny Toons. The animation teams leaned into the absurdity, crafting winks, nods, and meta-jokes about ratings and reboots. While it only lasted a few minutes of screen time, the impact stuck. Fans still debate whether this counts as a real crossover, but it became part of Warner's playful brand-building era when cross-promotion was basically a comedy art form. What made it fun was how self-aware it was. Both shows existed in universes where breaking the fourth wall was routine, so the mashup felt weirdly natural. It made zero canonical sense, but perfect entertainment sense. In other words, it was peak 90s cartoon energy, loud, clever, and just a little unhinged. Number 4. The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog x Mario, 1993. The 90s console wars weren't just fought on game shelves, they leaked into television too. In 1993, both Sega and Nintendo's mascots shared unexpected screen time in a series of bizarre TV crossover promos that aired during morning cartoon blocks. Yes, Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario appeared sort of in the same ads. These weren't full episodes, but promotional tie-ins where both characters existed in shared segments to encourage good sportsmanship or upcoming specials. The result? A surreal sight. Sonic's wisecracking energy-sharing space with Mario's cheerful let's-a-go optimism. It was like Pepsi and Coke doing a joint commercial. The animation quality swung wildly, with both studios trying to protect their mascot's image while secretly outshining the other. The chemistry didn't exist, but the audacity did. Kids watching had no idea they were witnessing two corporate rivals awkwardly shaking hands in cartoon form. It's not officially part of either franchise's canon, but these mini crossovers became viral gold decades later. Proof that even sworn marketing rivals couldn't resist a weird, televised truce. The message? In the 90s, anything could happen, even Sonic and Mario pretending to be friends. Number 3, Scooby-Doo meets Batman, 1990. It's technically a rerun mashup from earlier decades, but when Scooby-Doo meets Batman resurfaced on television in 1990 as a new special, kids thought it was brand new, and it quickly became one of the decade's strangest animated events. The original crossover, made in the 70s, was repackaged and re-aired for a fresh 90s audience with updated intros and marketing. Suddenly, the world's greatest detective was solving ghost cases with a talking dog. Logical? Not at all. Entertaining? Absolutely. The dynamic was pure comedy. Batman stayed serious while Shaggy screamed at every shadow. Robin tried to explain science while Scooby tripped over clues. It was campy, colorful, and gloriously inconsistent. Yet it worked mostly because the idea was so bizarre, it looped back into brilliance. By the early 90s, it became one of the most replayed cartoon movies in syndication. Kids loved it, adults laughed at it, and studios learned an important lesson. Even the oddest crossovers could find eternal life in reruns. Scooby-Doo meets Batman may have made zero sense, but it also proved one universal truth about animation sometimes. Weird sells better than logic ever could. Number 2, the Rugrats. Real monsters, 1999. Nickelodeon had already mastered weirdness by the end of the decade, But in 1999, they outdid themselves. The network's two biggest shows, Rugrats and Real Monsters, shared an unexpected crossover in the Rugrats episode Ghost Story. It was spooky, random, and absolutely delightful. In the special, the babies tell a scary tale that accidentally includes the monsters from the other series. Suddenly, Tommy Pickles and his diaper-clad crew were face-to-face with Icky's, Oblina, and Crumb characters from an entirely different universe. The idea came from Nickelodeon's creative team wanting to celebrate their growing Nicktoons family. The result? A crossover that felt more like a fever dream than a corporate strategy. The tones of the two shows couldn't have been more different. Rugrats was gentle, curious, and imaginative, while Real Monsters thrived on gross-out humor and creepy visuals. Yet somehow, the mashup worked. It was both silly and clever, like a Halloween special, written by kids who'd just eaten too much candy. Fans still talk about it because it symbolized the height of Nickelodeon's golden era. Unpredictable, fearless, and full of personality. It wasn't polished, it wasn't planned, but it was pure 90s. Proof that when cartoons collided back then, sense came second, and fun came first. Number 1. Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, 1990. If you've ever wanted to see the strangest crossover in cartoon history, look no further than Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. Airing in 1990, this one-time television special united characters from almost every major studio: the Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Garfield, Winnie the Pooh, the Muppet Babies, even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The mission? To stop a kid from making bad choices. The result was the most chaotic alliance in animation. Imagine Bugs Bunny lecturing side by side with Slimer from Ghostbusters, or the Chipmunks having a heart-to-heart with the Turtles. It was part moral lesson, part crossover circus, and all confusion. The studios had to temporarily set aside competition: Disney, Warner Brothers, and Universal, just to make it happen. The animation quality varied wildly because every studio handled their own characters. One scene looked polished, the next felt like a VHS glitch. But that inconsistency became part of its strange charm. Viewers didn't know whether to laugh, applaud, or hide under the couch. To this day, Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue remains a cultural oddity, a time capsule of when cartoons became public service heroes for one night only. It made no sense narratively, but historically, it's unforgettable. Every studio's mascot in one cartoon? Only the 90s could have pulled that off. So there you have it, 17 cartoon crossovers that defied logic, storytelling, and in some cases, sanity. From time-traveling cavemen to moral-preaching chipmunks, the 90s were truly the Wild West of animation. Which of these bizarre team-ups do you remember watching? Or better yet, which one do you think deserves a comeback? Drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep celebrating the weirdest decade cartoons ever had.